Greetings from the Book Whisper. Every story is a journey into a world of love, passion, deception, and self-discovery. Close your eyes, let the sounds carry you away, and may this story touch your heart. The Perfect Hostess. Chapter 1, The Scent of Lilies. The scent of lilies in the Chelsea loft was a physical presence on the evenings of Olivia's dinner parties. It was her signature flower, stark white, elegant, and utterly scentless to her after a decade of arranging them. She moved through the open-plan space, a symphony of brushed steel and reclaimed oak, her fingers adjusting a fork's angle by a millimeter, her mind a silent, humming checklist. Perfection was not a goal, it was the baseline. Her husband, William, held court by the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the Manhattan twilight, a crystal tumbler of single malt in hand. At 45, he was the picture of a crude success, his salt and pepper hair a testament to a life of calculated decisions. He was discussing municipal bond yields with Henry, his CFO, and Matteo, a sleek venture capitalist. Olivia was his perfect complement, 38, polished, the hostess who made the arduous seem effortless, whose very calm was a subtle power flex. Tonight's guest of honor was Theo Ashford, a brash, volcanic talent of the tech world whose latest company, Ether, Williams' firm, Sterling Lock, had just brokered into a monumental acquisition. Beside Theo was his wife, Amelia. She was not what Olivia had expected. Where Theo was a force of noise and ego, Amelia was a study in quiet containment. An archivist at the Morgan Library Museum, she wore a deceptively simple sheath dress and possessed an air of watchful intelligence. Her eyes, the color of tarnished silver, seemed to catalogue the room, pausing on the artwork, the books, the people. They met Olivia's across the expanse as Olivia laughed at a story from James, Williams' perpetually charming but shallow college friend. In that glance, Olivia felt a jolt not of friendship, but of recognition. It was the look of another woman who understood the weight of performance, the architecture of a curated life. The first fissure in her own impeccable facade appeared during the cheese course. Olivia slipped into the kitchen to fetch the artisanal chestnut honey from a small producer in Vermont. The kitchen, a masterpiece of minimalism, was her domain. As she reached for the jar in the Sub-Zero, she heard William's voice, low, intimate, textured with a warmth he never used with her anymore. It came from the butler's pantry, a discreet staging room off the kitchen. Impossible to stop thinking about it. Tuesday, the usual place, don't be late. A female laugh followed, soft, musical, and utterly familiar. Sophia Loren was William's junior partner, a woman of razor-sharp wit, a Stanford MBA, and a physique honed by a militant devotion to Barry's boot camp. She was 32, ambitious, and viewed Olivia with a polite, barely veiled pity she mistook for superiority. Olivia's hand froze on the cold glass of the honey jar, the world narrowed to the violent white of the Carrara marble countertop, the hum of the refrigerator, the pounding of her own blood in her ears. The laugh came again, a confidential, throaty sound, followed by the rustle of fabric silk against wool and then the unmistakable, soft, moist sound of a kiss. Time did not stop, it crystallized. Olivia saw the scene with hyper-clarity. Williams brought back in his custom Tom Ford suit, Sophia's manicured hand disappearing behind it. She did not gasp, she did not drop the jar, she inhaled deeply, the cloying, funereal scent of the lilies flooding her lungs like poison. Then, with a precision that felt surgical, she turned, walked back into the dining room, and held the honey jar aloft like a sacred relic. Forgot the final touch, she announced, her voice a bell of perfect, unwavering clarity. She met William's gaze as she placed it on the table. His eyes flickered for a nanosecond, a shadow of alarm, quickly masked by bland appreciation. Sophia, resuming her seat, had the decency to look at her plate. Later, as the last guest Theo, effusively thanking them, Amelia with her silent, knowing nod departed, William draped a heavy arm around Olivia's shoulders. Another triumph, my dear. Theo was visibly impressed. You are a marvel. His kiss on her temple was dry, proprietary, a brand. In their pristine, hotel-like bedroom, Olivia stood before the full-length mirror. The woman who stared back was a masterpiece of maintenance, blonde highlights perfectly rooted, Botox subtly smoothing her brow, her navy silk pajamas costing more than most people's weekly rent. But behind the cornflower blue eyes, a cold, clean fury was crystallizing. She would not be the weeping wife, the hysteric, the victim in her own meticulously curated narrative. That was a role for lesser women, women who hadn't spent 20 years learning the subtle arts of influence and control. She would be something far more dangerous, an architect of ruin. Chapter 2, The Blueprint of Discontent. Her first move was reconnaissance. She needed facts, not feelings. Through a chain of trusted, discreet contacts, the wife of a former ambassador, her own interior designer, she was introduced to Evelyn. Evelyn was not a traditional private investigator, a woman in her late 60s with the demeanor of a gentle librarian and the strategic mind of a chess grandmaster. She specialized in marital adjustments for the city's elite. Her reports were not salacious, they were clinical, factual, and devastating. The findings were delivered over tea at the Plaza, a location so public it was private, Tuesdays, between 2:15 and 4:30 p.m. The Lowell Hotel, room 412, booked under the name W. Smith. They enter separately, usually within 5 minutes of each other. A bottle of Veuve Clicquot is consistently ordered to the room. Evelyn slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were time-stamped photos from a long lens. William, head down, slipping through a service entrance. Sophia, in a trench coat, sunglasses obscuring her face, her hand brushing his back in the elevator bank. The intimacy of that gesture, the casual familiarity, cut deeper than any kiss. Olivia's anger did not dissipate, it transmuted, it became fuel. Instead of confronting him, she began a campaign of subtle, gaslighting erosion. She weaponized her knowledge of him, the minutiae she'd collected over 15 years of marriage. She misplaced the platinum cufflinks Sophia had given him for his last birthday, a gift that had made Olivia's stomach clench with its inappropriate intimacy. She replaced them with an identical pair from a different maker, their clasp slightly inferior. He complained for weeks that they kept coming undone, a tiny, persistent irritant. She redirected his custom shirts to a new dry cleaner, one she knew used a cheaper, harsher starch. He grumbled about the stiff collars, blaming a change in the laundry's formula. She fed him a piece of carefully crafted misinformation about a rival firm's interest in her lucrative biotech startup, a tidbit she overheard at her charity board meeting. He acted on it, aggressively pursuing the deal only to be embarrassingly outmaneuvered, costing the firm a minor but symbolic client. Each act was a single grain of sand slipped into the perfectly tuned machinery of his life, causing faint, inexplicable grinding noises he couldn't locate. But her true intrigue, the one that promised a more elegant destruction, focused on Amelia Ashford. At a charity luncheon for the New York Public Library at the Met, Olivia orchestrated a chance meeting near the Temple of Dinder. "I haven't been able to stop thinking about your work at the Morgan," Olivia said, steering them toward a quieter alcove. "The preservation of delicate, hidden histories. It must require immense patience and a very particular kind of sight." Amelia's silver eyes held hers, assessing. "It does. It requires understanding that the most valuable narratives are often the ones kept in the dark, and that the key to revealing a forgery isn't always in the object itself, but in the provenance, the story around it." A silent, electric understanding passed between them. Olivia knew, with absolute certainty, that Amelia's gilded cage, her marriage to the volatile, publicly unfaithful Theo, was as much a prison as her own, just of a different architectural style. Amelia had her own reasons for staying, her own quiet, formidable power to wield. They began meeting for coffee at obscure patisseries in the West Village, places where neither was likely to be recognized. Their conversations were a delicate, intellectual dance. Olivia spoke in abstracts, betrayals of trust, the erosion of a shared narrative, the architecture of a lie. Amelia responded in metaphors of her trade, altered documents, inauthentic signatures, the importance of carbon dating a sentiment. "In my world," Amelia said one afternoon, tracing the gilded rim of her espresso cup, "to dismantle a deception, you rarely attack the object head-on. It's too defensible. You discredit its history. You find the one ledger entry that doesn't match, the one witness whose account unravels the entire, beautiful tapestry." The idea took root, cold and brilliant. Olivia needed to discredit William's story, the story of the successful, faithful, impeccable husband and partner, and she saw her most potent tool in Noah. Chapter 3, The Unlikely Agent. Noah was Sophia's former lover, Their affair 3 years ago had been a brief, fiery scandal within their circle. The brilliant, troubled painter and the ambitious financier. It had ended, everyone assumed, because Sophia chose her career over bohemian chaos. Noah had been devastated, disappearing into his Dumbo studio and emerging only for sold-out shows that critics called searingly honest. He was the one person in their orbit who was genuinely immune to William's charm, seeing the polished veneer for the emptiness it concealed. Olivia visited his studio under the pretense of commissioning a portrait. The space was a glorious mess, flooded with northern light, smelling of turpentine, oil paint, and weed. Canvases leaned against walls, portraits filled with a psychological brutality that was mesmerizing. "I want you to paint me," Olivia said, not looking at the paintings but directly into his dark, weary, too perceptive eyes, "but not the me everyone sees. I want the fracture, the silence behind the smile, the calculation." Noah lit a hand-rolled cigarette, the flame illuminating the sharp planes of his face. He exhaled slowly. "He's fucking Sophia." It wasn't a question. Olivia didn't flinch. "Yes. And you want me to what? Illustrate your heartbreak? A modern Judith with a head of Holofernes?" "No," Olivia said, her voice cool and steady. "I want you to remind her of what she gave up. I want you to make her question her investment. I want you to make her nostalgic, and careless." Noah studied her for a long moment, then a slow, unkind smile spread across his face. It was the smile of an artist who appreciated a complex, morally ambiguous, and potentially devastating composition. "You're more interesting than I thought, Olivia. All right, I'll be your ghost." The plan unfolded with the subtlety of a sonata. Noah began a calculated re-entry into Sophia's world. He appeared at gallery openings she attended, looking tragically brilliant in paint-splattered jeans and a worn leather jacket, holding forth on the death of abstraction to a captivated crowd. He reignited a private dialogue with her on Instagram, commenting on her posts about Basquiat and Richter with an intellectual depth and passionate recall that William, with his transactional worldview, could never muster. He ran into her at the McNally Jackson bookstore in Soho, engaging her in a heated, flirtatious debate about autofiction. Olivia monitored the progress through Noah's terse, bi-weekly updates. "She's curious. She asked about the old studio. She's complaining about corporate drones." Meanwhile, with Amelia's meticulous, scholarly guidance, Olivia began a more concrete excavation. Using passwords William had lazily used for years, a variation on their wedding date and his college football number, she accessed his secure, private financial server. It was a maze of offshore accounts and holding companies. Amelia, whose work involved deciphering centuries-old financial records of merchant princes, proved an invaluable cryptographer. "Look here," Amelia said one afternoon in Olivia's study, their laptops side by side. She pointed to a series of transfers to an entity called Ariadne Holdings. "The amounts are small, regular. They're being paid out to a private security firm based in Delaware, not for corporate work. This is a personal slush fund, for secrets." William wasn't just cheating, he was paying to keep it, and perhaps other things, professionally buried. Chapter 4, The Gathering Storm. The tension in the Chelsea loft thickened, becoming a third occupant. William was increasingly on edge. The Noah situation nagged at him, a ghost from Sophia's past he couldn't control, a major deal at work, the Ether merger follow-up, hit unexplained regulatory snags, a nudge from Olivia, via a contact on the charity board who sat on the oversight committee. He became paranoid, snapping at his assistants, suspicious of leaks. He began picking fights with Olivia, a new and ugly tactic. He criticized the menu for an upcoming brunch. "Does everything have to be so precious?" Mocked her interest in a new gallery, more derivative junk, and complained of her coldness in bed, a projection so blatant it was almost funny. Olivia absorbed it all with the serene detachment of a psychologist observing a specimen. Her emotional investment was gone, she was merely fine-tuning the final stages of her design. She spent more time with Ava and Sophie, her two closest, least judgmental friends from her pre-William life, who provided a necessary anchor to reality. She took up Pilates again, not for William, but for the sharp clarity the physical exertion brought. The catalyst arrived in the form of a thick, cream-colored envelope, the invitation to Sterling Locke's annual black tie gala, this year at the New York Public Library. It was to be William's apotheosis, the night he unveiled the final, triumphant integration of either and cemented his legacy. The theme was modern Medici, patrons of the new Renaissance. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Olivia saw it for what it was, the perfect stage for a final, devastating act. Chapter 5, The Gala. The night arrived with a crisp, theatrical chill. The library's steps were lit like a premiere, paparazzi flashing. Olivia wore a gown of liquid obsidian, a stark, elegant void amid the sea of jewel-toned silk and sequins. It was armor. She moved through the grand halls, a shadow among the gilded ceilings and murals, exchanging pleasantries, her smile a practiced, flawless curve. She watched the players, William, radiating a manic, triumphant energy, clasping Theo's shoulder like a brother, Sophia, in a dress of daring crimson, glittering at his side, her laughter a bit too loud, her eyes periodically scanning the crowd for a glimpse of Noah. And there he was, Noah, invited by Olivia, holding court near a statue of Patience, surrounded by a flock of enraptured art world figures. His gaze would lock with Sophia's across the room, a tangible, electric pull. Amelia stood slightly apart, a calm island in the swirling vanity. She caught Olivia's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. The clockwork was wound. At the peak of the evening, as William took the podium in the majestic Celeste Bardo's Forum, the crowd hushed. His speech was about legacy, innovation, the fearless pursuit of the new. Olivia stood near the back, her clutch purse in hand. Inside, her phone, pre-programmed, was a silent weapon. As he reached his crescendo, "We are not just bankers, we are the architects of tomorrow." She pressed a single, polished fingernail against the screen. A series of encrypted, timed emails dispatched into the digital night. 1. To the most dogged financial reporter at the Wall Street Journal, with select, anonymized documents tracing Ariadne Holdings back to Sterling Locke's internal ledger, suggesting not marital indiscretion, but a pattern of using shadow funds for potentially unethical purposes, a far deadlier sin in his world. 2. To Theo Ashford, with a concise, factual dossier on Sophia's history of intense, messy personal entanglements with unstable creative types, including Noah, and her current, all-access role in the post-merger integration. It framed her not as a mistress, but as a glaring security risk and a liability drowning in personal drama. 3. To the entire Sterling Locke Executive Board and their largest institutional investor, highlighting a demonstrable pattern of reckless personal judgment creating unacceptable exposure, with attached, anonymized hotel receipts and a timeline that coincided with key deal negotiations. She did not wait for the fallout to begin. She slipped out through the librarian's entrance, a hidden door Amelia had told her about. The cold night air hit her face, a shocking, delicious slap. She walked east, the sounds of the gala, the music, the applause fading into the city's eternal hum. Her phone buzzed once in her purse. She didn't need to look to know it was from Amelia. A single line: "The provenance has been irrevocably questioned. The narrative is unraveling." She did not reply. She kept walking, her obsidian gown whispering against her legs, towards the anonymous, pulsating heart of Midtown. The love she'd once felt for William had been a slow-growing ivy, now dead and brittle. The passion was ash, the disappointment was the worn-out coat she had finally shrugged off. The intricate, beautiful web of revenge she'd spun no longer gave her any thrill, only a profound, echoing quiet, a job completed. Chapter 6, The Morning After. The silence in the Chelsea loft the next morning was profound. Sunlight streamed in, illuminating the lingering ghosts of the party, a stray crystal glass, a discarded napkin. Olivia sat at the kitchen island, dressed in simple linen, drinking a cup of single-origin coffee. Her tablet glowed beside her. The news alerts bloomed like dark flowers. Sterling Locke faces internal probe over unauthorized accounts. Ashford merger in turmoil as security concerns arise. Wall Street Science personal life sparks governance crisis. It was not a salacious sex scandal, it was a professional evisceration. William's currency was trust, credibility, impeccable judgment. She had not attacked the man, she had bankrupted the brand. He arrived home just past noon. The drive from the office must have been a silent scream. His tuxedo was rumpled, his face a gray mask of defeat and a boiling, incoherent rage. He stood in the doorway, the ghost of the master of the universe. "What have you done?" The words were a venomous hiss, the veneer finally, completely shattered. Olivia looked up from her tablet, her gaze as calm and impenetrable as a mountain lake. I hosted one final event, William. I simply cleared the room of the rotten guests. It was bad for the collective atmosphere. He stared at her, truly seeing her for the first time in 15 years, not as an accessory, a social asset, a beautiful mirror for his success, but as a separate, formidable intelligence, a strategist, a silent partner in his destruction. The realization that his perfect hostess had not been managing his home, but meticulously managing his ruin, was more devastating than any headline. "You'll get nothing," he spat, a last, feeble attempt to wield the only power he thought he had left. "I'll freeze the accounts, you'll be left with the clothes on your back." A faint, genuine smile touched Olivia's lips. It didn't reach her eyes. "I have everything I came into this marriage with, William, my wits, my patience, and myself." She took a slow sip of coffee. "My lawyer, Sophie Bernstein, will be in touch. I'd advise you to get one. You're going to need him for more than just the divorce." The sheer, unassailable calm in her voice broke him. He made a choked, animal sound, turned on his heel, and left, the door clicking shut with a finality that echoed through the spacious, empty loft. Olivia sat in the silence for a long moment, then she stood, walked to the console table in the foyer, and picked up the massive vase of white lilies. Without sentiment or ceremony, she carried it to the kitchen sink, tipped it over, and watched as the water swirled down the drain, carrying the scentless, perfect, doomed blooms away. She placed the empty vase in the recycling bin. Breathing in the new, unperfumed air, she looked around her beautiful, silent cage. The door was now open, the game was over, the meticulously written story of William and Olivia had reached its logical, unsentimental end. The real story, her story, alone was just an empty page, waiting for its first, fearless mark. And just like that, another journey on the Book Whisper comes to an end. We hope it was worth your while. If this story found a place in your thoughts, help us keep the magic alive. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next world we explore. Your like is the best signal telling us which tales to tell more of. Thank you for listening. Until the next adventure.